call this work session to order. Please start with introductions. Mr. Weddleton.
John Weddleton.
Crystal Kennedy.
Meg Zalatoff.
Suzanne LaFrance.
Felix Rivera.
Forrest Dunbar.
Emily Volkart.
Ben Anderson.
Brendan Babb.
Okay, and the last three folks are all from the I team. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay. So you guys have a presentation for us today?
Yes, we do. It's about 25 minutes.
Perfect.
And we are welcome questions, but we'll try to go through that. If you have a question that's pressing in the middle, please ask it. But we also have tried to set aside a bunch of time for questions as well.
Great.
So I'm excited to be able to share information about the I-Team and what we've been doing over the last 3.5 years and what it is. My name is Brendan, and I'm going to start through the slides here. So we're going to go over who we are and what we do. In 2016, we were lucky to be invited because of all the great work that Anchorage has done, the administration, the assembly, creating the Chief Innovation Officer position. Only cities who had an innovation officer or innovation department were invited to apply for this I-Team grant. There were about 20 cities that applied. Anchorage worked really hard. We had the mayor on most of the calls, or all the calls and on the video. I learned later we were the only team that did that as we were applying, but basically all the great work the assembly and the city and admin had done allowed us to apply, and we were lucky to get an Anchorage I-Team. And we'll go over what that is, but basically it's like a startup inside City Hall where they provide grant funding and try to bring in different people to the city and really try to stir things up a little. So these are the other cities that have I-Teams. You can see there's international cities as well, but we're really fortunate for our size to have this investment in innovation. And I like to think Alaskans are pretty innovative on their own, sometimes out of necessity, thinking of different ways to solve problems. So the grant...
Sorry, Mr. Rivera.
Thank you. Could you go back to the last, and maybe you'll explain this, what the different phases are?
Sure. So basically, everything's about iteration, which we'll get to as well. But basically, Bloomberg Philanthropies in 2012 experimented by launching investing in cities, and they invested in 5 cities. So that was the first phase. They saw how that went, made some changes, and then did another 13 cities for the second phase. And then one thing they learned was that it's really helpful if the city itself is already thinking about innovation and has put money towards that, and it is intentional. So then the third phase, you had to already be thinking about that to be included.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then there's some stuff going on in Paris that happened a little later. It's a slightly different model, but the other great thing is whenever they add Anchorage, they have to redraw the maps anyway. So basically, it's a 3-year grant. We started in 2017. We've used that money really well, so we're still carrying some over into 2020. It's $1.5 million. It helps cover team members and then prototypes, technology, various other elements. It doesn't fund implementation, so we want to work with departments and come up with possible solutions, but then eventually we create them together and turn them over to them for them to fund moving forward. We were lucky to meet, this is strange now that he's running for president, but we were lucky to meet with Michael Bloomberg a year and a half ago. He had heard about the work of the Anchorage I-Team, and we were lucky to have a 20-minute meeting with him after Anchorage was awarded $1 million public arts Bloomberg Philanthropy grant. So we were able to share some of our work and also hear about some of the stuff that he had done. So just quick bios. I'm the co-captain of Code for Anchorage, which is where I kind of started in terms of doing civic tech. It was a job I didn't know that existed, but really just trying to make government services better. I also am lucky to have, or I say lucky a lot, I worked really hard to get 5 patents, 2 of them for Mars rover image compression work. My team is making sure I don't say lucky all the time for everything. And then I really enjoy DJing in unusual places, like out on the Iditarod Trail.
Mars.
This is Emily Volkart. She has worked for President Obama. She's also been a fellow in Nairobi. She has done innovation at the federal level and digital services as well. And we put out an application for the best and the brightest, and Emily saw it, and we were lucky to lure her back to Alaska where she had lived before. This is Ben Matheson. He is a data analyst and a journalist, and we'll actually be heading out on the Iditarod Trail in 2 weeks. We're one of the few teams that are impacted by the Iditarod. But he'll be working on a podcast called Iditapod and traveling along the trail. And he has done some great data work, and we're lucky to have him and lucky to see his skills grow as well. So what we do is we like to partner with muni departments or outside agencies and create stuff together. There's a lot of buzzwords. I'm going to try to keep away from those. But basically, these are some of the partners we've worked with: Food Bank of Alaska, SWS, and we'll cover some of the other stuff. Our primary goal is to improve the lives of residents, which is pretty much what most everyone in this room is trying to do, and also save money for the muni. So what do we actually do? I'm going to let the rest of the team tell you.
So for one, we live and breathe data, and we use data science to solve problems within the community. So it's a term that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but for us, data science is about finding and making use of valuable information from big and often untapped data sets. So we can help solve problems that are like trying to find a needle in a haystack, provide some early warning tools, prioritize work for impact, and automate some mundane tasks as well. It goes by a lot of different names, but ultimately it's about solving problems across different domains. And a great example of that is how we work to increase equity for property tax exemptions in Anchorage. So we got $26 billion in residential real estate value across Anchorage. About $5 billion of that is exempted from property taxes for a variety of reasons. The two biggest are the $50,000 residential exemption and the $150,000 senior citizen and disabled veteran exemption. And those are for residents who live in their house most of the year in their home. We've got about 48,000 of those exemptions on the books. However, they're not all proper exemptions. People should notify the muni if they move or things change, but that doesn't always happen. So people move to different parts of town, across the state. They may rent out their house, give their house to their grown kids, and just otherwise experience life changes. Life changes fast. So in this, we saw a great opportunity to work with property appraisal up on the third floor as they were beginning to their effort to review all these exemptions on the books. And in the past, their review process has been rather paper heavy. We've got boxes and boxes full of applications going back several years. There's a whole room full of boxes upstairs. And what they've done in the past is basically pick up a piece of paper and then manually review these by trying to match the homeowner in databases and see whether this exemption should still be on the books. And across all the years, there's 100,000 pieces of paper for multiple exemptions for multiple owners. And it's a very thorough but labor-intensive and somewhat tedious process. So in this, we do have good digital records for property records, and we did see an opportunity to use data science here. And what we set out to do was use data science techniques to automatically classify flagged exemptions as well as validate the good exemptions. And the way we did that was basically write some code that matches the property data to other databases to see whether the person lives where we believe they live and whether they live where they're getting their exemption. So if that turns out that people do appear to live exactly where they get their exemption, that's good. That's a low priority for further review. But if they do live in, say, Fairbanks or Wasilla, or if it looks like they live out of state, then that's a higher priority. We should take a closer look at that exemption. And we were successful with this data project. We're able to match 93% of the properties. The vast majority of them are good, so people live where they get their exemption. But we found about 4,000 properties that we flagged for follow-up. And in this, we're able to take the universe of 100,000 pieces of paper of essentially the universe down to 4,000 specific targeted exemptions for review. Prior to building out a team and working with us, property appraisal will do about 6,000 exemptions per year. But with our flagging process, we can screen all 48,000 in minutes. We can do it over and over again. We think this has impact in a couple key areas. One is reducing staff costs. The property appraisal team was looking at hiring 5 staff and 1 manager to review all these. And that was revised down to 2 staff plus 1 manager and a quicker time frame as well. So that's $280,000 in salary and benefit saved. And also we can recover lost revenue. So in this we see the potential for $1.5 to $3 million in recovered revenue. So once property appraisal finds that an exemption should be removed, they talk with the homeowner and make sure that that's the case, and they remove that. Treasury then sends a bill, and we recover property taxes from last year and from previous years. We're still in the early days of doing this. The letters just started going out last month, but we've already removed 125 exemptions, amounting to revenue between $80,000 and $90,000. So things are still early, but we're optimistic that this makes a difference on improving equity for property taxes in the future.
Well, so another core part of what we do as an I team is putting people at the center of everything we do. So as we were working on the property tax project, we thought a lot about how removing tax exemptions actually impacts residents. And we wanted to investigate if we could reverse our process and actually find people who should be getting tax exemptions but aren't. And the answer was yes. We found over 1,200 seniors who were likely eligible but had not actually applied for the senior citizen tax exemption. So we wanted to send them a letter and kind of reach out to them to let them know they were eligible. But we know from our previous work, if you send a long bureaucratic letter, it can often just go into the trash can. So what we used were behavioral nudges. And this is kind of a tool that is a low-cost intervention based on behavioral economics and psychology that makes it easier for people to make decisions in their best interest. So we try to make things that are easier, more attractive, more social, and more timely to help encourage action. So you can see the letter that we sent. One of the first things we have is that 95% of Anchorage residents take advantage of the tax exemption. And what that's about is basically it's the everybody's doing it nudge. Our species depends on social connection, so we're kind of hardwired to want to belong and fit in. And so this is a really powerful tool for encouraging action. We also placed a graphic that's large with red at the center of the letter. And we do that because it basically draws the reader's attention to the most important information. And then we turn the steps they needed to take into clear action items. And so that way, people are more likely to take action if they know if it's easy to do. We also included an application with the letter and started to pre-fill out some of the items. And one way we did that was to try to reduce friction costs. So for example, if you got the letter in the mail, you might go sit down to fill it out, but the first field is what is your parcel ID? And most people don't know their parcel ID, so they'll set it aside, they won't, they'll forget about it, and then they never send it in. So by taking kind of these small effects, the idea is that these things add up over time and really make a big difference. So we sent 1,249 letters. About half of those we've received back so far, and most of those have been approved. So we have now 677 senior citizens. Yeah.
Yep.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have some areas in Midtown where the seniors want to do the inverse, which is not take the property tax exemption. And so it'd be really great if they could tell you that so that then they don't get any other additional follow-up, because they're like, oh, I'm getting like all this great stuff to take my tax exemption, but I'm actually okay paying them more in taxes because I want to pay my way.
Property appraisal has a way to make a note of that on their side. No one's sent out a senior letter before, so we are learning things as we do this.
Great.
But they can make a note in CAMA, the software they use, to say this person doesn't want the property tax exemption. If they show up on a list, we don't need to use any more staff time for it. But that's a great suggestion. I'll make sure that we talked about it before, but I'll make sure it's actually happening.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, if folks don't want a ticket, then I think we should leave them alone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. So, so a total of $1.6 million is going to senior citizens because from this batch. Now, some of those senior citizens might have applied already, but about half of those were 66 and older, so they hadn't done it the previous year. And I think like 22 or 23 of them were over 80 and had never done it. So these are people that could potentially be on a fixed income and just not know about the service. We also did something really similar with the Treasury Department in previous years, and changes to the letter that they sent, including that kind of inspired them to make other changes to their collections process. And they were able to actually bring in an additional $1 million in revenue just kind of from small changes. So it's a pretty powerful at kind of low cost.
So which one of these is the new one?
So the new one is the second one.
That's what I
and
thought.
so,
Much more threatening.
well, the pink stood out, and so this was actually the bit team came to do like a training, and we had 25 municipal employees kind of design it over a 2-day period and then trial and test it. So.
Yeah, we had a contest where we broke into teams and did the lame thing where we used something from all the teams, but didn't really declare a clear winner.
And it's kind of fun that we do like things called flip tests, where we have somebody like look at the letter for 10 seconds and then put it down and tell us what they learned. So you should be able to, in 10 seconds, to kind of know what the letter is about. So the other kind of tool that we use is human-centered design. And that's a creative approach to problem solving that focuses on the human's perspective at all steps. So we work on developing deep empathy. We solve problems with people instead of for people. And we test ideas to see how people actually behave. So we did this more recently with a project that we were working on with food security. And we visited the food pantry and conducted interviews. We shopped the cars using the WIC vouchers ourselves and saw what a challenging process that can be. We watched the WIC families actually buying groceries online to learn. But basically, we're working with partners to develop ideas instead of developing ideas for them.
Yeah, so we experiment. We want to fail, learn, and try again. That's the luxury of having this grant. There's great people working at the city, but they are working all the time to deliver their services. They're often under-resourced and overworked. And we have a certain luxury to be able to think about things a little longer and generate experiments and learn from them and test stuff. So we create prototypes, which is basically just a model of something that we want to learn something from. And we want to do it quickly. And it could be a piece of paper that we say is a website, and we move it around. And we want to interact with users and discover problems quickly. The other great thing is they're really inexpensive, and you can fail quickly. So sometimes there's huge software projects that cost a ton of money and go on for 5 years, and no one's actually used it until the 5th year. And so we want to learn what's wrong real quick. We also iterative. We want to make things, learn from it, do it again, rinse, repeat. So we did some research. I'm going to take you into a small problem that was.
I'm sorry, Brandon,
sure.
Before you go forward.
No, go ahead, Walter. I have a few.
Okay.
Yeah. So we were looking at SNAP, or food stamps, which helps assist people put food on the table. Food Bank of Alaska does a great job of helping people navigate this application, which is 28 pages long. The SNAP thing isn't online. It's complex language. You have to have an interview. There's many steps. Food Bank of Alaska does outreach and helps people, and they're fantastic, and they're great to work with as well. So we looked at one thing they were doing, which was follow-up calls. Once they'd helped someone, they wanted to make sure that they actually got SNAP, because they go through an interview and do this other stuff. So we observed Indiana here making phone calls. And we noticed she would do 5 minutes of research, looking at notes before she called someone, and then often the person wouldn't be there, or the phone was disconnected, or she had the wrong name, or that person was out. So we're like, oh, is there a way we can come up with a prototype to test this? So we're like, what if we could text the phone numbers and just see if people are there, if they're available, if the number's still valid, ask them a question like, are you getting SNAP? If everything's thumbs up, they don't need to call this person. But if they have a problem, then they say, hey, give us a call. So that was the first iteration. So then we had Patrick over working at Food Bank of Alaska. We often embed people where they're working, and we learned some more stuff together. And they decided to pivot. They're like, what we really need is something where people can ask for help, because we're going out to the library, setting up a table, and 4 or 5 people are coming up. But what if people who want help could reach into us? So they came up with something, a SNAP Help text bot, and basically it allows you to text SNAP to a phone number, and then it asks you a series of questions, just like when's a good time to call you, your name, some other information, and then it allows the food bank volunteers to be more efficient when they're calling back people. They know what they want, they know it's a renewal or a case status. Also, they're iterating on food bank ads. The great thing about digital stuff is you can see the results really quickly, so you can test stuff and say, oh, we got way more clicks on this than the other one. So it's an advantage than having to go out and interview a ton of people. You can test stuff really quickly. We also chose a tool that would allow Food Bank of Alaska. This is kind of a graphical interface on the side. They can move stuff around. They can change the text in there. They can change what the chatbot's saying. They can change the logic. So now they can iterate. They can learn and make things quickly and see. They can hear something from someone who comes in and quickly change it. But we also want to learn things quickly. We have this idea like, oh, we have Thanksgiving blessing coming up, and everyone's going to get a roasting pan. What if we put a flyer in there? Because these are people that probably could use Snap, and it did not work that well. But we learned quickly. I mean, we got a fair amount of people
who roast their brochures. Is that what
yes,
happened?
that's the brochure right there. Text Snap to this phone number. I was super excited. It cost us like $300. We learned that Facebook ads are much more effective because people are probably trying to prepare their meal. They probably just throw it away. But we learned it in the span of 5 days. We learned like, all right, let's nix that. And so the impact so far is we've had 460 people helped via text. 46 households are now enrolled in SNAP and getting benefits to help put food on the table. That amounts to about 85,000 meals a year if they remain in the program or still need the program. And that's also an investment in the Anchorage economy, the Alaska economy. That's $288,000 of federal dollars that are coming into local zip codes, being spent at stores, and there's a multiplier effect as well. It also reduces staff time. They can be more efficient and effective. They still do outreach and go out to the Mountain View Library, but now they can also do this. And it also helps with remote areas, which this works across Alaska. Often there isn't an office there, so this helps people see a Facebook ad and get in contact. And we were lucky to be nominated in this international competition for just digitizing public services. We were the only U.S. city, and we were lucky to be nominated. We did lose to Brazil, but it's still great to see that the work that we're doing, and it's not just us, like I'll say me or the team, but it's really all the great staff in the Muni and the Assembly and all the residents of just showing what Anchorage can do. So now Anchorage is now seen as the leader. Whoops, I stole my own slide. And basically, something that's kind of changed for this administration and this assembly is that in the past, there weren't as many grants applied for, or we'd heard that getting the mayor to sign off on them didn't really happen. And now we're applying for more. There are 8 Bloomberg government innovation programs, and we are involved in 6 of them. It's more than any other city in the U.S. And it's because of all the great staff. Grants are hard. They take a lot of time to apply for. They're hard to, I have to do a grant report next week. But it's really valuable because it's helping us increase our capacity and scale. We've also gotten national news for some of the stuff that we're doing. It's really putting Anchorage on the map. And now people are inviting us to apply or talking to us about other things, and I think it gives us other opportunities. I also appreciate that the Assembly often travels to conferences as well and is networking and learning from other cities. The great thing about, so this was on our Treasury letter. The information was in a book on how to fix government. And what that has done is it's made people think differently about Anchorage. This was a data science conference. I worked with the Anchorage Visitor Bureau and UAA. We made a cheesy videotape with dancing animals. Not those dancing animals, but anyway, we won meeting planner of the year award. I took my mom to the event, and then that conference happened last July, and there were 3,200 people. It was the largest conference we've ever had. And it resulted in $300,000 of municipal taxes going to the economy. Because Alaska is on the bucket list, people brought their families, they went and traveled afterwards. So really reimagining what Anchorage is and the innovation and data that we have here. And then the great thing about cities, I've worked in academics where you kind of keep your paper close to your chest, or I've worked in the private sector where you don't tell anyone your idea because they'll steal it. Is the great thing about government is people are working here because they want to help people. And if they can help someone in their city in Akron, Ohio, and it works in Anchorage, Alaska, they are super excited to share that with you. So we've been able to borrow from other cities, and other cities are borrowing from us. These are some of the cities that have replicated. About 2 weeks ago, I checked my phone before I was getting ready to go to work. and I saw this Mike Bloomberg, and he was interested in the building design. I opened it up. It's actually Mike Bloomberg from Holyoke, Massachusetts. But I was like, oh, this is cool. Wow. But the work that we've done is being replicated in other cities, and we have collaborated and copied, and it's just a great way to scale. Like I am super lucky to have 5 patents, but I do not need to reinvent the wheel. If our team can borrow something from another city and iterate on it, it helps everyone so much more quickly.
Cool, so what's up next for our next project is that we're actually working on reducing energy use in muni buildings, and this has been inspired by the Climate Action Plan. So we've taken a lot of lessons learned from our previous projects. We've spoken to a lot of local experts and partners and kind of narrowed our focus of where we think we could have the biggest impact in the shortest amount of time. And what we're really focusing on is how might we help facility managers use data to take immediate low-cost action to reduce energy use. And so with so many muni properties, there's a lot of potential for us to save large amounts of money and large amounts of CO2. So stay tuned, we'll have more updates on that, but that's kind of where we're heading right now.
Yeah. So we've just showed you some of the stuff that we've been working on over the last 3 years. There's many other projects. We also appreciate the Assembly passing a climate action plan, and we really are talking about things, but we are working with departments and working with the city, and it's a team collaborative effort. So we really appreciate all your work. So far, the cost has been, because we've had this grant, is my salary over 3.75 years plus benefits. So that's the cost. And then we've helped bring in grants along with other people. This isn't just us bringing in the grant, but focused on, through the connections through Bloomberg Government Innovation, we brought in $2.3 million in grants. And then the projected revenue and savings, we've talked about the Treasury letter at $1 million, and the low end for property tax is $1.5 million plus savings there. There are some additional ones, but basically this sums up to $4 million of grants, revenue, and savings off $500,000 cost. Now we're going to be rolling off the grant partially through this year, so we will start being on municipal dollars, and there will be costs that will show up in budget requests. And we'd love your support on those. But we also want to find a way to provide information to the Assembly. A lot of our projects work across Alaska or in Anchorage. So we'd love to provide information about the SNAP texting, the senior letters, so that you can tell your constituents that if they want this, that they should be getting something in the mail. And then also we've done some work with earned income tax credit that's still developing, but that's something that could be useful for people. And really, we're just excited about the work we've done, and it's a small team right now, and we're excited about who we can work with in the future and the impact we can have. And thank you so much for your time and for helping Anchorage be a leader in innovation.
Thank you, guys. We have questions from Mr. Weddle.
I got a couple little things. One, did we spend that $4 million yet? Because I got big.
Not yet. Well, so
Not yet.
if you pull the slide back up. So the one more up. The 280 is already money not spent, right? So that's already money not spent. The 1.5 is starting to roll in, and yes, we have gotten 1 million, and it's probably already spent.
Okay. So projects, you got your pens?
I'm sorry, what?
Okay, projects. Get your pens out. Okay. One thing is, however you prioritize this has been an issue for a number of years, is if you have sell your house and you're on well or septic, you have to get a certificate of on-site acceptance. And engineers do this thing on paper and they hand it in and it stacks up and eventually it gets entered. And when it gets entered, they do data entry. They might, instead of 2.8, they'll do 28, which is impossible for, different, you've seen this with variables. It can only be in a range and data entry errors. But it seems like a simple thing, but we're doing this by paper. It's not done accurately and it's done in a timely way, but it tracks our nitrate, various features of wells and so on. And the Hillside group did a nitrate study a number of years ago, and half the time they spent was fixing the data because of data entry errors. But that's I think we still need done, but it seems relatively simple with your abilities. Then another thing we do is so the submitting plans electronically was supposed to be this great innovation, time saver, money saver for everyone, except that we charge the people who did it. We don't now, we did. But people don't use it. Because why? That's, I don't know.
Sure. Through the chair, Appreciating Director of Economic and Development. The platform to which Assemblymember Weddleton referred is called the E-Plan system. We stood it up in 2016, and it is an electronic portal for actually submitting architectural drawings and other plan sets directly to the department. Those of you that know me know I hate paper, so you can look at plans, review plans, mark them up, etc., all electronically. Like many of our experiences with software, it was not without glitches, but it has been improving over the years. We just went through a big reiteration of that last year to eliminate some of the problems that were inherent in the original implementation. There was a surcharge charged on all permits, not just electronic plans, but to recoup the capital cost, we added a surcharge to permits that lasted about 2.5 years. And once it was fully repaid, we turned off the surcharge, so that's no longer in place. The E-Plan platform is not widely adopted yet for 2 reasons. 3 reasons, actually. One is simply lack of familiarity, and that falls on the shoulders not only of our staff, because we are still getting familiar with it, but frankly on the design community too. There have been a few designers that have committed to submitting only on E-Plans, and they have been really helpful beta testers in the program to help us identify these flaws. That's number one. Number 2, boomerism. I mean, people are just, some people are really used to doing things the way they've done them for 50 years. And it's really hard to relinquish paper copies, paper plans, etc. is the last one. And then finally, there are some specific shortcomings of the platform itself that still have yet to be resolved as it relates to things like concurrent review. So if you submit your plan, does an electronic version of that go to every discipline that needs to review it? And can they all work on it separately, and then somehow those all get merged back into one? And that's a little bit of a technical challenge that we're still resolving. That will ultimately make the process more efficient. Now, we've had good times and bad times with it. There's been a number of big dollar and low dollar projects that have gone through quite successfully, but there have been a few that have said, this is really kind of a nightmare.
To motivate me, here's why it goes down there. Remember the Dead Sea Scrolls, all that stuff from thousands of years ago? You go in there with your plans, 4 rolls of plans. I did a little comic shop. Imagine a real project. 4 rolls, and you plop them all down, and you spread them out, and as you go through, they stamp them the date they looked at, they roll them up, and they keep 3 of the 4, and they file them away, and you carry yours away. And when you go back, they send someone back to get those 3 rolls, and they'll make some little change, and you stamp that change on each of them. And this is how it goes. Imagine, this is how we operate building in Anchorage. I'm not wrong, am I? It's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
You know, that's where we are. Someone can solve that.
Well, I think Robert Dole, who just started there recently, is looking at a lot of improvements on there and being able to track that and looking at forward things so that you could say, hey, I'm going to be there in half an hour, and someone could go grab some of those sea scrolls for you before you get there. He's doing some really interesting stuff. I know he has 5 or 6 things in the works. I'm not sure where they are exactly, but I think he's been a breath of fresh air in terms of trying to improve those processes.
So when you get an award of innovation, we'll keep that secret.
Okay.
You'll lose your award if they see that. That's why they're in a separate building, 8-9 miles away.
And separately, John, I'd be interested in talking about your experience with doing energy efficiency upgrades and solar. One of our goals with this is to do stuff with muni buildings, learn from that, and see how we could scale to other commercial buildings where we're using data that's available and will be available to other commercial people. Emily's done a fantastic job of thinking about partners and how we scale this impact throughout Anchorage and to other cities.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Okay, we got everybody. I think Suzanne was first, then Ms. Zaltel, and Ms. Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So one piece of feedback that we've talked about in our meetings and we get regularly has to do with the website.
Sure.
And in particular, getting documents, finding documents, and so on. And I don't know if there's a way to think about it differently instead of, and maybe we shouldn't be thinking about it in terms of people get this from the website, or maybe there's a more agile way or something. I don't know if you all have been involved in any of those discussions or.
We haven't worked directly with that. IT has been taking a look at that. They're often big and often expensive projects, so it's been prioritized within there. One thing that we've tried to think of with IT is putting data where people are already looking. So we have restaurant inspections, but nobody goes to our health site to look. So those are now in Yelp. So when you bring up something in Yelp, you can see the Muni restaurant inspection there. And then another example would be bus schedules and bus times, where you're going to Google Maps to look at a destination. And now we have real-time information going there. So some of it is like when you can't beat them, join them. Like where are people already interacting with data? Can we put the Muni data there? But I think I totally agree with what you're saying. It's also a hard problem. And I think IT is taking a look at that, and we're happy to give advice. We have been working. I'm horrible because I say yes to everything. So with the addition of Emily and Ben, we're trying to get better in terms of scoping and figuring out where we can add value and where we can make an impact.
Thank you, Ms. Franz. Ms. Alto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in the vein of ideas, we've been really trying to, or I have been, to help the FCC let people know about community councils. That is a tough nut to crack because they have Facebook pages, they post on Nextdoor, and it's still the same 20 people or 100, depending on which community council you're at, who come up. But we have one in particular who's trying to breathe new life into their community council, so we've been trying to creatively think of ways, and they get $75 a year for outreach. So it's not a ton of money. So I just toss that out there as an idea. I mean, I suggested we print postcards and go like knock door to door, some technology, some are better at Facebook than others. I mean, it's volunteerism, but I think that, when I see what you guys did with Snap, something that's really user-driven, because when people want to find their community council or they learn about their community council and what a tool it is, they're happy about that. But otherwise, they just often don't know.
So my background is like digital community organizing, and so it's kind of not the scope necessarily of that team, but I'm happy to chat more about it sometime, kind of just because how to get people engaged can really be about what's the meeting like when they get there? How can we retain them, and how can we make it seem less scary to do something out of your norm? So it can be less about the tool and more about the language and who else is in the room, because you want to see, in the Obama campaign, we used a lot of photos and your neighbor is there, and this isn't a scary political thing. This is just something about a community coming together. And so I'm happy kind of ever to talk
Yes,
about
please.
this.
Awesome. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and I would say that we love technology and data, but really we want to find out what the root cause of a problem is. And so, one of my favorite examples here is a compost exchange where the gardeners were like, hey, we need more compost. And then someone came up with this idea of bring your food scraps in a bucket, and we'll let you leave with a bucket of compost.
Not just anyone, Travis Smith.
I know.
My former campaign manager.
Travis Smith. I celebrate Travis's innovation because that it's just a simple solution. Another thing I've seen recently, Emily is the expert, but a lot of assemblies and other places trying to provide childcare, trying to figure out how to crack the childcare in that, so that different people can come to community stuff. And I know the assembly's been working on some stuff there.
We're taking baby steps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
You didn't even realize.
No.
No, I didn't even.
Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I agree with Ms. Alatel. Anything that we can do to make community councils less scary, the better. A few things, and then respond to whatever you would like. So first is I'm curious if the I team has considered doing any projects with the school districts, because I think there might potentially be some interesting avenues there. Second is kudos to the letter. One of my constituents posted the letter on Facebook, and they loved it, and because they didn't know about the senior property tax exemption, and So they're like, hey, seniors, you should know about this. Then accessibility. So I really appreciate the work that the I team does around particularly low-income individuals and families. But on that same vein, what does the language access look like in the work that you do? That'd be curious for me to learn more on that. And then last is, are you guys working on any e-platforms like Airbnb and other issues? Because we've done our best to attempt to put some regulations on those, but those e-platforms can be a bit interesting to regulate. So I'd love your thoughts on that.
I will let my team answer some of the stuff. I'll answer a few and then throw it to them. In terms of language access, that is something that we have looked at in particular projects. We helped redesign a WIC application form, which is a food assistance for women, infants, and children. And we looked at the most common languages. So it's not completely out yet, but we're looking at Hmong and Tagalog and Spanish. And then we also learned in that process that at the state level, it has to be ADA compliant. So we learned about fillable PDFs and some of the ways to display information so that readers can handle that. And we're excited that the state is now using a fillable PDF for WIC that's ADA compliant. And we have something in the hopper for when someone's available to translate that into other languages. We have worked, the snap texting, we have thought about Spanish, but we haven't pursued that. In other work I've done, we've translated a thing to check food stamp balances into UPIC, actually through a contact and no. But one thing that is nice, some of these services, when they're only asking for like your zip code or your phone number or number information, that translates well into all languages mostly. So then if you can translate the questions, then it allows you to scale those languages. But that's something we'd like to think about more. That's a great point. Airbnb, we've looked at a little of the property exemption thing. I'll let Ben talk about that. And then I'll let Emily talk about the school district and some involvement we've had there.
We've just started to look at some of the other data sources that we have in terms of property tax exemptions, and where does the muni have administrative data that gives us very obvious clues about whether people are not in compliance on property taxes. As for the larger bed tax issue, we haven't gotten into that, but we have had success with projects that involve analyzing and finding value from data. So it's a project that we would be interested in knowing more about.
And in terms of the school district, we've been partnering with them on the energy project. So they're actually kind of ahead of us on some of the energy improvements they've been doing. So we've been learning from them and figuring out ways that we kind of can scale and collaborate together. I think Ben also talked to somebody at the school district about just as ways to like connect with people, like using it as an avenue for connections through the EITC and things like that. But if you have ideas or like, this is a really cool person at the school district you should connect with, definitely connect us because it would be great to work with them. And then if you don't mind sharing that Facebook post with us, I would love to see that, and even reach out to the person to like thank them and hear about it, because we've been meaning to call people to see, get some quotes and understand, if it was a surprise or why they hadn't applied before.
Yeah, and Property Appraisal has done a great job on their side of recording people's reactions or recording some extra data for us as people are calling in. So yeah, it'd be great to do that, and we are looking at a potential story now that this property tax stuff is working its way through.
Great. So I have a couple as well. I think everybody has a couple of suggestions. First of all, Brendan, I'm disappointed, but I understand why you haven't been able to figure out how to make it so people know which basketball courts are currently active in Anchorage. We talked about this for years. So in the summer, nobody knows where people are playing basketball, and there's no way to figure it out. Except to go to the.
I have thought about it. I haven't moved it to the top of my priority.
Yeah, that's fine. I understand that. It's Anchorage has a surprisingly poor basketball culture considering who play.
I think other cities are making progress on there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some app in New York City that lets you know which courts are active. Although most courts are just active all the time. One thing that I have raised the administration and have not yet been able to convince anybody of, but perhaps you could look into it. is I suspect that the frequency with which we force our employees to change their password actually reduces security. And obviously it takes staff time as well. And I've sent a couple of studies to the IT department being like, look, the newest data suggests that if you make people change it more than once a year, it actually reduces security. People start writing it out, they start using like easily guessable clues. And so could you look at that? That would be wonderful if we could have more, and the military's done it too. The military has moved towards two-factor authentication instead of frequent password changes because they have this one system that everybody had to change their password and they had super complicated passwords. They had to change it like every 3 months. People just stopped using that system. And people like literally stopped using that program. And so if you could look into that a little bit, I think that's worth a new set of eyes.
Yeah, no, I'd love to take a look at it. I also am Mark Merchant in IT is our security person. He's quite excellent, and I'd love to just chat with him and see what he's seeing as well.
Yeah,
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I get annoyed every 3 months. It's like, or whatever it is, however many months it is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Then I have something else. Go
Just
ahead.
on the password, and I log into my home desktop. I can't change my password from my home desktop. I have to come to the computer here.
Right.
I don't. Maybe there's some science that requires that, but I used to be able to change it.
Yep.
I had that trouble
We don't
once
have
when I was
desktops.
traveling to a conference in a hotel. I think I'll take a look at
That's what I do every time too.
I call the help desk.
Yeah, I call it help desk every time I have to change it, and I don't know if that's true of other people. Maybe it's just because we are like in a unique situation. But anyway, you want your funding restored? Fix our password issues. The last thing I just thinking about the largest departments in the city. So obviously they are police and fire, right? And have you spent any extra time with the police department trying to figure out ways that we could save money in their budget or ways we could innovate with police or with fire?
Yeah, Ben and Emily have talked to APD. There's a couple of different inroads on that. One is APD Elmore uses quite a lot of energy, and one thing that we're excited about is we have 15-minute energy usage data for electricity usage data from Chugach and MEA that's now available on the web for 50 buildings, which allows us better analysis. So we're able to take a look at APD Training Center and Elmore, and Ski's group over at M&O is doing a great job. They have some enhancements to those buildings planned for this summer. And then in terms of APD, Emily and Ben have done a great job, and I'll let them tell you on discovering stuff.
So we met with their records department.
Yeah.
So they have quite a backlog, as I know you guys are aware. And so right now they're kind of in crunch mode, trying to get through that backlog as fast as they can. But we've talked with them about potentially doing some kind of innovation sprints on how to kind of quickly reduce the backlog. And so I'm not sure where that is exactly right now, but we're going to check back in March with them. And we looked for like data opportunities. The challenge is a lot of the software is, it's complicated and it's hard and it's more IT than it is innovation team.
Yeah.
But we definitely, if I could work with anyone, that's what I would want to work on. So.
And they're being modest in a sense. They met with them 2 or 3 months ago and talked about the records backlog. And just those discussions alone led to the police department making some changes that have helped with removing some of that backlog, or do we need to do this request? And I think Emily could speak a little more flavor to that.
Yeah, I think because of our conversations, they started to figure out that, so right now, if somebody calls, like another police department calls for information, they have to go look it up, but they are now like figuring out ways to give that police department permission to look up things, because they already have gone through all the privacy training. So and that can reduce something like 20% of the requests they get, just by kind of doing things like that. So that's what we were looking for, is where are the really fast changes that could have a big impact, that don't require millions of dollars of IT.
Yeah, because also one of our goals is to do things quickly and help develop something that someone takes over, and then we pivot and look at other stuff. And as a classic Alaskan metaphor, we want to help teach people how to fish. So sometimes just these conversations, or giving people the space to experiment with an I-team seal of it's okay if this doesn't work, because that's really challenging in government, is to create a safe space and you can't really innovate unless you're allowed to fail and experiment.
And if I can just sing the praises of the records department, because I know that the backlog, can get some negative stress is of all the departments I've worked with, they've just been the most enthusiastic of change, open to ideas, really easy to collaborate with. So I think there's a lot of great potential.
Thank you. Ms. LaFrance?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two things, since Felix mentioned the school district. My kids would really love an app that sends an alert when the school bus is near. I'm kind of joking about that, but
No, that's cool. When I first started, I looked into that.
Oh, really?
School district. Yeah.
okay.
I didn't do it. I'm just saying I'm familiar with that thing.
Yeah. And the second thing, I really appreciate how you approach the problem solving at the ground view and engage like right from where the staff and teams are working. And I know you mentioned Bob Dole has been taking a look at a number of possible changes, and I'm not on the CBDC committee, so I don't know what all's been discussed. And as far as like, we also get a lot of feedback on the permit process. I know Chris is here in the back, and that it can take a lot of time to go through, and people express frustration with it. I think it would be really interesting from both sides of the counter, what it's like for the employees, who are in that situation, as well as the people who are seeking permits.
I think that's a great idea. We can take a look at it. And tying back to the thing you were talking about, passwords, that was a frustration I think IT worked on, where people at that front desk, it would automatically log out. Like they'd turn to do something and they'd be logged out of their computer and have to log back on. And I think they made a change there. But that would be this kind of human-centered design approach of like, what are the pain points that residents on one side of the counter are experiencing, and the great employees we have on the other side of the counter.
It's really cool. I mean, how you approach things are. Because you're using all the technology and tools which people don't immediately assume to be part of a softer customer person-oriented approach. So it's really neat what you've been able to accomplish. And my mind was wondering, like, if you turned it towards the private sector, one, what would you charge, to solve these kinds of problems, and what kind of market is there for that? Because it seems like you have really specialized, highly honed skill sets too with that.
Yeah, I thank you very much. That is one goal of the program, is to bring different people into city government. Susie Marshall, also, we were lucky to have her, and then she went on to become the IT director, but she had some training in terms of process improvement, so a different way to think about things. Long Beach I-Team, they have a way to charge departments, and they've also worked with the airport and some other entities, but have figured out a way to do a calculation on what their costs are.
So you don't receive IGCs the way that
we are looking at a funding model of proposing a budget and having that approved. We have looked at IGCs, but that is not a current model that we have. We are lucky because we've tried to spend smartly and are bringing. It was only supposed to last 3 years, and we're bringing some of that money over to the 4th year, but that will run out about halfway through the year.
Like the Hanukkah of municipal agencies.
Yes, but so we are trying to figure out different models for that. So the real full year cost will occur in 2021. So we hope to continue to have great success working with great employees and the assembly to prove our worth and why we're not going to generate as much money as we have on this, but to continue to find ways to save money and help residents.
All right. Any final questions or thoughts? Okay. That's you guys. Anything else from you guys? Otherwise, I'll close this work session.
No, I just really appreciate everything the Assembly's done. When we came with the grant, and I had to get it approved at the Assembly, there was a $500,000 match, and John asked some good questions there. But having the faith that we would be able to get that match and committing is innovative on your side, and I really appreciate everyone really helping Anchorage be a leader. So thank you so much.
We have one last question from Mr.
I
Costa.
missed the first part of the meeting, Brendan. Did you offer to provide us a report of some kind that could be an innovative report? It could be some kind of a place where people can go to see what the innovation team has done or is doing, because there could be some opportunities for crowdsourcing innovation opportunities. And the best way to understand that is to see what you've been doing. Now I understand this whole work session was on that, but it might be helpful to see something kind of published or printed or made.
Yeah, the one thing we're hoping to do, we're a smaller team. Most of the other I teams are a little larger or leveraging fellows, so that's something we hope to grow on. But we've been focused on the work, and honestly, we are iterating and learning, and we haven't been as good as I think most units are that are trying to solve problems about telling people what we've done or writing up the results. So that's something we'd like to work on. Yeah, and then the other thing is we'd love, as we're working on projects that would impact residents, provide that information to the assembly so that you can do outreach for us as well, or give you a heads up on saying, oh, this is something that might happen to your constituents. And that's something that's really just my fault. I haven't done that.
And as our projects grow, it'd be great to be able to, like, if we're looking for people to participate in something, to reach out to you guys, pass along.
But yeah, just having a place where we can point to and say this is what's happening with these dollars, and it's great. And that I think would be helpful for a lot of reasons. I think you actually tapped into my only complaint about this municipality. I work with all the departments, and I think it's universal. We don't tell the good stories of what we're doing very well. We're all working hard and with our noses to the grindstone, and we fail to communicate so people believe nothing's happening.
Yeah, no, totally. Government is my jam, and when I got here, I learned about a bunch of other cool stuff that I had no idea. Like, we need to do like a golden oldies or like re-release albums and stuff, like the stuff you can get from the library.
Mixtape.
Yeah, the mixtape, like, oh, here, and find services that don't cost us that much more to scale, and just get more people using them. The fact that you can get audiobooks and music from the library for free, there's a ton of cool stuff. And some of the stuff John mentioned in terms of e-plan and other stuff, just getting the word out and figuring out a way to do that, even for community council meetings in a friendly, informative way.
Thank you.
Great. All right, we're going to close this work session and move on to the next one.